Welcome to everyone joining our webinar. We are going to give it about a minute for others to join, and then we will begin. All right, well, hello and welcome. I am Mitra Sorrells, Editor-in-Chief at PhocusWire, and we are delighted to be co-hosting this webinar with our friends at Miles Partnership on a topic it seems everyone is talking about: the power of generative AI and ChatGPT, and specifically what it means for tourism and hospitality.
I'm Gray Lowry. I am a Senior Vice President with Miles Partnership, overseeing our marketing and technology infrastructure, as well as sort of our future vision around AI and other sort of game-changing platforms. Today, we're going to be joined by our panelists a little bit later, but before that, we're going to just kind of get into a little bit about the agenda and then some also resources at the end.
Yeah, before we begin, let's take a quick look at our agenda. So I will give a brief explanation of this technology and how it differs from traditional chatbots. Then Gray will join to show us ChatGPT in action. Next, our panelists will join us to share their insights. And finally, we will allow some time at the end for questions from all of you. So please, if you have questions as we are going through this, put those in the Q&A tab. So the concept we are talking about is generative AI, and the most common tool is ChatGPT, a chatbot from a company called OpenAI. Surely you have heard about it by now. There is such a mix of excitement, confusion, and concern about ChatGPT, and in the next hour, we want to try to demystify some of that for you. GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer, and it is that GPT part that makes this type of chatbot very different from traditional chatbots. I'm sure most of you have used a traditional chatbot, for example, for customer service types of uses. In a hotel setting, chatbots are used to quickly give guests answers to questions such as, can I get a late checkout? Or what time does the restaurant close? These traditional chatbots are known as rule-based chatbots. They operate based on predefined rules and decision trees. They respond to user queries by recognizing specific keywords or phrases and providing predetermined responses, often built off an FAQ. But they lack the flexibility to handle complex or ambiguous language, and their responses are limited to what has been explicitly programmed into them. These new GPT-based chatbots, such as ChatGPT, are advanced language models that use deep learning techniques to comprehend and produce very human-like text. The ChatGPT models are trained on extensive text data sets, enabling them to understand context and generate contextually relevant and, again, remarkably human-like responses. They can manage complex language, respond to ambiguous queries, and produce coherent and natural language. ChatGPT models are very versatile and applicable to a broad range of tasks, including customer support, language translation, and content generation. And if you have followed the buzz in the last few months, you've probably also heard about how they can do things such as write poetry, create menus, code websites, pass the bar exam, and even more. OpenAI only released ChatGPT on November 30th, and since then it's become what everyone is talking about, what every company seems to be working on, and what all of us in the industry are trying to determine how to use. At PhocusWire, we are tracking developments across the industry from every sector and around the globe. We really want to make it easy for you to find our coverage and to keep up with what's being talked about. So Right on our homepage, you will see ChatGPT across the top menu. That will take you to all of our stories on this topic. Just to share a few with you. So back in January, this was the first piece we put out when things were really starting to bubble up after the holidays. We compiled some opinions from leaders across the industry. It's actually quite interesting to look back at that now and see how some of that has evolved just in the last few months. In February, we wrote about one of the first tools built on OpenAI's API from one of our panelists, actually, Christian Watts and his company Magpie. And we will talk more about that. And then in March, of course, the big news was the launch of plugins with Expedia and Kayak as the first travel brands to create them. Less than 2 weeks later, Expedia then announced that it had integrated ChatGPT into its mobile app. And then we ran an opinion piece from Travelocity founder Terry Jones on the potential for ChatGPT to drive conversions. And then we recently had a roundup of tools. In fact, since that story published on April 18th, we have had an influx of emails telling us about many more that have launched. So we will have an update on that tomorrow. And also just today, we have a story on how to build digital trust into ChatGPT interactions. In addition to our coverage on PhocusWire, we will also have a session on Center Stage at Focusrite Europe on the topic of ChatGPT with panelists from Microsoft, Trip.com, and Kayak. I hope many of you will join us. That's June 12th to 14th in beautiful Barcelona. It's a new location for the event, and we are really excited about that. And in a few weeks, my colleagues at Focusrite will be publishing a report on generative AI and how it is transforming the travel cycle. So be sure to look for that. Also, we, along with Miles, have put together a list of resources as well as all of the slides from today's webinar, and Miles will be sending that to all of you via email tomorrow. So Gray, now it's your turn to show us some examples of how ChatGPT works.
All right. Let's get into some examples. This could be an entire, hour-long presentation on its own, but we're going to try to make this really quick, a little bit fun, and also make it, as applicable as we can. So when we think about use cases, we have our sort of content, marketing, advertising, trip planning and booking, customer service, administrative and operational support, but really with generative AI and mostly these large language models, it's really whatever you can imagine. And so when I think about AI, I think about the really big fish. To me, there's these specific moments in life where you see something for the first time and it sort of recontextualizes the way that you see the world. And for me, I always like to use the idea of the really huge Goliath grouper at the aquarium that kind of reframes the way that you see the world. And OpenAI and ChatGPT, I think, has done that when it comes to AI in general. The problem that we have is that we are still at the point where we don't know what that is going to look like. And so, yes, I took the background of that picture out using Canva's magic tool, which is a great use of AI right now, the ability to quickly edit photos. But where I'm torn and what we hope to walk through a little bit today is, where is AI's place in business and in hospitality? Is it the party trick, trying to pull that dollar out between two bottles? Or is it because it's becoming something like Excel, PowerPoint, Word that are critical to our everyday lives? Because I can sit here like my 3-year-old and tell you exactly all the cool things it can do and say, look at this, look at this, look at this, but then I may not use it for a few days. So how does it actually integrate into the business operations on a day-to-day basis? And so we're going to look at sort of how to interact with these tools and what we can do as far as integrating them in. So to start this, what is a prompt? A prompt is how we interact with a large language model. And the most important thing to think about when you think about prompts is if you put garbage in, you're likely going to get garbage out. You're going to really need to focus on the types of tasks you want to accomplish with these large language models. So it could be generate, analyzing, categorizing, or modifying text. And some examples that I like to think of are brainstorming new ideas. This is probably my favorite. Getting advice on how to approach a situation, market research, as well as meta prompts, which are actually the ability for these AIs to prompt themselves. Hugging Face's Auto GPT. So the idea that they actually create their own prompts. So with that, When I think about a prompt, there are 4 key elements. The instruction, what is the specific task or thing that you want the model to perform? The context, what is the external information or the additional context that you can add to better steer responses? The input data, so what is it the question or what sort of response are you trying to get? And then the output, what is the format that you want that response in? So there are lots of different styles of prompts. You have basic prompts and you have advanced prompts. We're going to go through a few different examples of basic and advanced prompts, but essentially your basics are summarize this, extract text from this, answer this question, generate this code. And I have a link here to a GitHub repo that an individual has posted that really goes through these in depth. On the more advanced side, you have zero-shot prompting, few-shot prompting, chain of thought, zero-shot, chain of thought, self-consistency, and a bunch more. These are essentially adding context as you are working with these models to get better answers. So the idea that it may not know how to do a math equation from the start based on its general knowledge, but if you show that it how to do it, then it can actually get that answer right. Math is one of the areas that it struggles in. So taking these into example, let's look at a few quick examples if we can. So one of the first examples here, we're using one of our clients, the Margaritaville Beach Resort in Nassau, and I just went and copy and pasted some reviews from TripAdvisor because I didn't want to spend time setting up an API, but you could do that and do this on an ongoing basis. I basically had it ingest all of the reviews for the resort, and I should have just had it say that it understood what they were, but it started to summarize because I didn't specify the exact output I wanted. Once I got that output, I asked it to rate the responses from the management on a scale from 1 to 5. I'm giving it very explicit instructions, with 5 being the best, and provide 3 points of feedback on how to improve the managerial feedback of responses. So they could be more personalized, have better empathy, or also have a follow-up. These are just general ways of giving it specific prompts as to exactly the type of output that I want from the tool. So from here, I want to take it one level further, right? So I want it to recap the review from Alan B, which was the first review on the page. And I want that to also critique the response from Nigel, who is the customer service representative. I want it to include 3 edits and then rewrite the response to make it better and bring it up to the rating of 5 based on the same criteria it used to rate the reviews beforehand. And so it goes through and it basically says that Alan B's review highlighted dissatisfaction with cleanliness of the room and slow service at the hotel, and gave a critique of Nigel's response. Then it rewrote that. The interesting part here is we have a hallucination, which is basically where we are the AI is making things up. So Alan's review never included anything about the room cleanliness. He actually said the room and the hotel itself were great and nice, and never mentioned cleanliness at all. So by not giving it any information up front, it got that wrong, because these tools, to quote Ezra Klein from the New York Times, and maybe use an expletive here, are basically created to be a bullshit artist, if you will. They are trying to give you the information that they think that you want. It may not be accurate, but statistically, it has the highest probability of being what you want out of the model. And so by re-putting in Alan's review, I was able to get a much better response from the tool, as opposed to relying on what it thought it knew about it. So by giving very specific information or adding context in line with these bots, you can do a lot more. All right, so now that we see one example of sort of summarizing and contextualizing and providing a level of interpolation on reviews, let's go and do some stuff as a marketer. So as a marketer, I let the bot know that it's a marketer and a copywriter, and I ask it to summarize the voice of the Ritz-Carlton as well as the Four Seasons. It does a pretty good job coming up with a little bit of a paragraph here, right? So from there, I ask it to tell me the differences in those summaries. The main differences are the Ritz-Carlton errs towards elegance and exclusivity and highlights its rich heritage, where the Four Seasons is more warm, genuine connection, and also focusing on innovation, but still having a level of refinement. So from there, that's not bad. So I ask it to write some social ad copy for me, targeting a female luxury traveler in New York City with a median household income of $500,000 US, 2 children, 1 boy age 3, 1 girl age 6. They're promoting a week-long vacation to Miami and highlight the unique amenities of these fake hotels that I made up for this. It does a decent job, right? What we'll see is that we have modern luxury in here. It uses the word exclusive a few times in the Ritz as opposed to the Four Seasons, but overall, not terrible, but not great. We probably could get this to be more specific. So taking this one step further and leveling up, what we do is we go to the Ritz-Carlton's website and we grab their gold standards of hospitality, how they view themselves, how they define their brand. And we ask the model to summarize the brand voice from this text. And basically, it will now take this and use this to help us generate a more specific brand voice as opposed to what it knows on its basically pre-trained breadth of knowledge is going to draw from the specificity of what we gave it in that initial prompt. So here, it lets us know that the brand text is more sophisticated, elegant. It focuses on ladies and gentlemen more. It just is a little bit more specific. And so now I ask it to basically provide that same answer using that brand voice, and we get an entirely different response here. So indulge in the ultimate family escape. We see the addition of dear ladies and gentlemen. We see a bunch more about relish unforgettable moments. We have family dream vacation and the idea of remembering this, again, focusing on ladies and gentlemen. But again, these prompts, the specificity of them and what information it's drawing to and what you can add in the context when you're trying to prompt them creates a much different answer each time. So going one step further, we want to kind of take this to our platinum level, which is a pun on Marriott since we're talking about Ritz-Carlton here. And so we want to know if it understands what an Experian Mosaic marketing segment is. And so yes, it lets me know that it's familiar with it. So now I know that I can draw on that base of knowledge and primes it for answering those questions. I ask it to summarize the Experian Mosaic AO3 segment, which is Kids and Cabernet. And it basically gives me a very good summary of the Kids and Cabernet segment from the American Royalty segment and Kids and Cabernet. And so now that it knows this and I'm happy with this result, I ask it to create a story about a person for me. So using this profile as a base, please create a target consumer profile that is female with 2 younger children, household income of 50K plus, or 500K plus, 50K would not be right here. Give her and her children names, associate brands they like, travel preferences, favorite shows, foods, drinks, and their favorite activities on the beach vacation. So now we have Emily Thompson, her children Lily and Max are 8 and 5. Here's her household income. These are the brands that she, Lily, and Max like, their travel preferences, their favorite shows, their favorite foods, their favorite drinks, their favorite activities. This is pretty good, right? But the AO3 segment for Experian it's more suburban, right? So I need this to be updated to be Upper East Side of New York City. And we think that Emily needs a husband, so we add a marital partner to her. And so now we have David Thompson here, and she lives in New York City. So I'm pretty happy with this base profile. Now I use this base profile as sort of a starting point. And now I let the AI know that it works at the Ritz-Carlton South Beach, an actual property. And I take the information from the property overview, and I put it into the AI GPT-4 bot here. And I ask it if it understands the details of what I've given it, and it responds, yes, that I understand the details. So now it has a primer of where to draw from on its responses and understands what its role is. So now I ask for Emily and her family will be visiting. Please provide a sample itinerary for each day broken into meals, morning, afternoon, and evening blocks with 3 options for each blocks and 2 meal options for each meal. They've rented a car and they can go off property, but they prefer to keep it pretty close with under a mile. So we get a day 1 itinerary, day 2. We get a break here on day 3 because we have used too many tokens. So we ask you to finish for day 3. Again, I haven't fact checked these. I would highly recommend fact checking because again, models are basically built to lie to you and give you the information that you want. So from here, we ask that we have our staff get an example schedule of when the AI staff should go and check in with the family each day. Ask it for the specific times at when it should check in and what would be the least intrusive times for it to happen. So each day, here are the check-in times for someone on the AIs or the concierge's staff to go and check in with the family and ask them how they're doing and how they're enjoying their stay. From there, we asked for a note to be written each morning for Emily and ask her how her day was and remind her what things she has on the upcoming opportunity and remind her that she could extend her stay until 4 p.m. if she needed, because if you notice on one of those itineraries, it has them at the hotel till 10 o'clock. From there, we have a little bit of fun. Now we ask it to redo these notes, but in the tone, which is one of my favorite things to do, written to Max as Hulk Hogan. So now it basically takes the entire example of those notes written to Emily, and it adds in, hey there, Max brother, which is the Terry Hogan type speak, and he adds a piece of trivia about Hulk Hogan in Miami. So fun way of changing tones, a good example of this. And what we can do now is ask it to write a a farewell email, thank you email to the family addressed to Max using the tokens that from MailChimp, the email service provider, put in the family name there as a token, and then also, in addition to the content, generate the code for this. From there, we basically can take that, put it into a file, and now we have Hulk Hogan wishing Max and his family the best and thanking them for their stay at the Ritz-Carlton South Beach. So just some fun examples of what we can do. Outside of text, we also have tools like Astria that are using different image generation models. These are a client of ours, the Margaritaville at Sea, and we can basically put in images, ask for very specific things back, like a high detail photograph of a boat in a sea on a clear day with a realistic photo, Ultra HD, shot with Sigma, f-stop 4, and all these other different things. And now we have photos of a sunset, the boat in a sunset, which we didn't have before. We can also do things with our own selves by fine-tuning models. And so this is me on a Christmas night in a cafe drinking coffee. Here is myself as a man with ultimately some 16:9, 50mm portrait photography in Kodak, Nikon, up beta. And so this is my Russian oligarch picture right here that I used on the intro. And essentially, I did a presentation a couple of weeks ago where it was Back to the Future themed. Here, we're doing a Back to the Future movie, Lost Scene, DeLorean, 4K, wide angle, f-stop at 8, ISO of 100. The specificity on these is really what gets you. So I recommend looking at a website called Prompt Hero. It's one great resource to understand how you can write these prompts and understand how to get the stuff you need out of these tools, because that is the major challenge. There are so many tools, so many things you can do. These are two great resources to keep in mind: futuretools.io, opentools.ai. They list everything that's coming out, about 50 to 60 things a day. We'll send this out with you with the resource list with a bunch of other things, but I love both of these websites. They do a great job of summarizing things for you. Outside of this, what Google Cloud is doing with their Gen App Builder, which I'm still waiting for a invite to, if anyone knows anyone at Google that can get me a trusted tester program for that, is pretty cool. It's a self-serve ability to create large language model-based chatbots and searches on your site, turnkey. And Microsoft is doing the same thing. It's been the leader in this space with OpenAI and their Azure private cloud, the ability to have this in a more enterprise type environment. Really cool stuff. So with that, we're going to get into our panel discussions, and I'm going to introduce our panelists and have them come on screen. Up first, we have Shane O'Flaherty, Microsoft's Global Director of Travel, Transportation, and Hospitality. We have Tim Peters, who draws on years of experience with Wyndham. He's the president and founder of Tim Peters and Associates, full service e-commerce and internet marketing consulting firm. And Christian Watts, who we already talked a little bit about, this founder and CEO of Magpie, a content management platform for tours and activities. That is about as fast as I could do that, and I need to take a breath.
Oh my goodness. Yes, that was wonderful. Gray, thank you so much. Clearly, you had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, that took me about 8 hours. So just to be clear, 8 minutes and 8 hours, like there's a lot of prompt engineering that goes on to have this type of fun.
Yeah, well, and I think one of the things that I think of as I'm watching you go through that, for anyone watching that has not taken a few minutes just to play with ChatGPT, that's really the best way to figure it all out. And everything you did there is free, correct? It's through the free service.
I was using GPT-4 for some of that, so there is a $20 fee for that. But GPT-3 and 3.5 are free. 4 is a little bit slower. There's some limitations on it, but it is about 10 times more costly to run. So there's a $20 a month fee to use that service, which I highly recommend if you want to use these tools. Pay the money because it's well worth it.
Yep. Okay, wonderful. Well, great. Well, let's get into our discussion. I want to remind everyone, don't forget to submit your questions in the Q&A tab. We will certainly try to get to as many of those as we can. So Shane, let's begin with you. Microsoft has invested, I think, about $10 billion in OpenAI, the maker of ChatGPT. You have really been immersed in this topic in your work with Microsoft's partners at hotels, airlines, cruise lines, and of course, I know Microsoft has a fairly extensive partnership with Amadeus. Give us a sense of what you are hearing from these partners about ChatGPT. What are they starting to do? What are they considering? What are you advising them?
Thank you, Mitra, and thanks, Gray, for all that. I mean, it's like the tip of the iceberg on what Gray presented. There's so much. There's there, and there's more, and it's a little bit mind-boggling when you have kind of the entire knowledge of humanity today up to 2021 in an API. We've kind of reached this inflection point where in the past, I think humans had to adapt to technology, and now technology has kind of done the flip and essentially has become our co-pilot in life.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating. Yeah, and we work across all different sectors, travel, retail, across all different sectors. And we're seeing we're working with thousands of companies around the world as they really look at it, I kind of say both in short term and long term. They have different swim lanes associated with it. A lot of the use cases are initial use cases around what Gray talked about, which is all marketing content creation. Other use cases around more, I would say, on the B2B side, the in-centric with the company. So more around call center, summarization, sentiment analysis, some unique cases around that, because I think with sentiment analysis, you can understand not only consumer sentiment, but then if you have it internally with your different teams groups, you could have, as an example, employee sentiment on, in a hotel, on all the different group movements you have. What's the sentiment at this time in an airline sector? You could have the sentiment of what's happening around flight preparation of all those flights, those thousands of flights. And you can understand, okay, based on the sentiment of my employees, this flight may be delayed. Regardless of, forget the mechanical delay, it's like another layer there. So there's lots of different areas of focus. I think we've seen different swim lanes, and it's whether it's around, I would say the developer community, that ability to increase productivity, the marketing community, internal. And then I think the longer speed is a good example of on a B2C side, but the longer swim lane is really understanding your enterprise data, what you have, and then how do you fine tune that for the consumer to drive more personalized experiences. I think everything Gray is talking about is really driving a better personalized experience for the consumer long term. And if you think down the road, you could have your own AI agent, the hotel will have its own AI agent, and those two are going to talk together really to make my experience as best as possible. And when we're in hotels today, they really kind of digitally ignore you. So I was excited when I see Gray's comments where you're sending a note to the consumer every day, creating that emotional connection to them about what they're doing and exciting them about their day. And that's kind of lacking today. The human experience is there, but the digital experience, up-layering that is going to be super exciting moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, everything that you're describing there, it's kind of this efficiency superpower, isn't it? To do everything you want to do and need to do, just better and smarter. So Christian, maybe if you can jump in. I know you were a very early adopter. You were talking about it on LinkedIn, I think, before I saw anyone else talking about it. You created the content optimization tool that we wrote about back in February. I'm curious, what do you know now here at the end of April that maybe you didn't know back in January? What tips might you have for anyone that's listening?
Well, yeah, thanks, Mitra. The funny thing is, I think the more you know, the less you know on this stuff. The more you start digging in, the more questions it brings up, and having more conversations with people. It's mind-boggling where this stuff can go. I think we jumped on this really quickly at Magpie because it just fits perfectly with what we do, which is product content management. And creating content right now with the way we do it, it's a perfect fit. So we've been able to create descriptions and FAQs, and we built a really cool chat bot, sort of a Q&A bot. So it's really been a perfect fit. But I think, like I said, the more you look into this stuff, the more you start to see how it reaches into every aspect of what we do. And I think Shane just mentioned at the end there, this agent piece. I think that's kind of where it goes. We're going to have these AI agents that we're going to be talking to. It's a little bit ironic that we're talking about using AI to foster a customer relationship, which is kind of a human relationship, but we're using AI to do it. Be interested to see where that goes. I also want to say, I think it's amazing that Microsoft is actually cool again. 20 years in the doldrums, and now OpenAI is the coolest company out there.
Yeah, I don't want to miss the opportunity to mention, with all this talk about agents and kind of the next step with this, that is very much what the piece that we have today in PhocusWire is about if these agents come to fruition and how we deal with some of those security issues with that. So, great.
Yeah. So, what areas do you think are going to be most impacted in tourism by this type of technology?
Well, I think as we saw from your demo, Gray, and a phenomenal demo, by the way. I mean, I think that really gave an overview of the kinds of things that are possible. I think the question is, what areas of tourism and travel were affected by the internet? What areas of tourism and travel were affected by mobile?
Yeah.
we are looking at another transformative technology, another generational technology that I think is going to impact all kinds of areas. You know, the most obvious, and I think you showed a great example of this, is what it does to marketing and what it does to customer experience. One of the things that we have to take for granted is that the average is about to get a lot better. The very best copywriters, the very best content creators, they're going to be fine. It's the people who were less than great who are suddenly going to get much better. You know, I like to think about the fact that Usain Bolt is the fastest man on the planet. There is no way I can outrun him. But if you put me in a mid-price Toyota, to use a technical term, I'll kick his ass. And that's what we're about to see, right? You're going to get a whole lot of very average and very mediocre runners who are going to be able to raise the bar and suddenly get to a very good place. And that's going to raise customer expectations of what they should get everywhere. And that's going to affect everybody and every area of tourism.
I love that answer. I love the idea that it's sort of the rising tide lifts all ships type of thing. And I think
raises the bar for competition, right? Because it's
correct,
not,
yeah.
it's pros and cons. If it gets easier for everybody, it gets harder for everybody.
Exactly. I actually read a study the other day that Alibaba did, where it was basically evaluating these models as recommendation engines. And because they're sort of created to be sort of give you exactly what you want, which kind of can tie into the hallucination things, but it's actually viewed as one of the results of the study by Alibaba were basically that it is a great recommendation engine. So that type of technology, and I think the way that they can sort of pivot the different use cases is really going to be interesting. And again, to your point, raise the bar across everything and increase competition. It was a very interesting study. Highly recommend kind of looking at that. It's a little bit technical, but it was still good.
Cool.
So do we want to jump in with audience questions, Mitra, or go to any of the other questions that we had sort of pre-set up? Because we're at about, let's do throw one out to anyone, you think?
Well, I do think we definitely want to get to this question because I know there was a lot of interest from our panelists when we had discussed it initially. This idea of what this means for the direct versus intermediary business for hotels, for anyone across the travel industry. Is this going to really empower the OTAs? Is it going to potentially shortcut the customer journey? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, if I could jump in first, suppliers win today because they provide a great product, they provide a great service, they provide a great experience. If you are a hotel, no one is choosing you because of your technology. They are choosing you because of the experience that they have when they stay with you. Now, obviously, if you're not using technology well to make that experience better, just like you did in the demo, Gray, that's going to hurt the overall experience. So you have to have a really solid technology strategy. You have to have really good partners who you work with who help you do those kinds of things. But suppliers are always going to be in the supply game. And if you do a good job at the supply area, you're going to be fine. The real trick is what's going to happen with intermediaries, because they're constantly juggling all of these different elements that they have to keep moving. And somebody just threw a new ball into the mix, and it's a really big ball, and it weighs a little different, and it suddenly throws everything off. And that's where we're about to see, I think, a lot of dynamism come in. I personally have thought Microsoft has been cool for a long time, but they have certainly raised the bar for Google. They have certainly raised the bar for Expedia. They've certainly raised the bar for Booking.com. And like any of these, now it's a juggling act and musical chairs all at the same time. The music will stop at some point, and somebody's going to be left, trying to figure out where they sit and still trying to juggle these balls. If I can completely, mix metaphors there.
Yeah.
Christian,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to add to Tim's comment, I think if you look, like McKinsey has a report that travel in general is like way down on embracing AI, but it can also be the number one industry that can be influence AI. So for me, it's like it's just recognizing with travel companies, airlines, hotels, cruises, travel agencies, is this ability that you really need to embrace technology. We're pretty far behind other sectors. So how do we create these moments of unity that we can share information across each other, because it's happening in different sectors? It's really, it's just more about this, the travel sector embracing it. It's real, it's here. It's not a technology issue anymore. this is really about a cultural issue of embracing technology and really empowering you and the consumer to get more out of travel. I think it's a super exciting time, but as an industry, we really kind of have to put our foot on the gas because we're behind, and we're sitting on legacy systems that really need to be modernized. So we see this happening. We see some movement in the marketplace, and we're hopeful that it just continues in the travel. It really can, it has a huge impact on travel all up. And I think so. It's a matter of embracing it, and this is not, and it's more of a cultural issue rather than a technology issue. And to your point, I guess back to the specific question, if you look at who's investing now, first out of the gate as an example is the OTAs with Expedia. So again, they're always first out of the gate. They got a tremendous amount of data scientists in those companies working and always ahead of the curve. So how does the hotel industry, the airline industry, how do they catch up? And the fact that you have your own enterprise data and your data set, and then how do you allow inside of that, that ability to reason over your data, ChatGPT, generative AI, to reason over your data, provide more personalized experience? Because as Tim said earlier, if I'm the supplier, I'm in control, and but I need to step ahead and accelerate kind of my technology advancements.
I'm going to want to hear something from Christian on this specifically, but one of the things that I think we have to watch are what are the use cases that really matter. Expedia has had a chatbot for the last 2 years now, obviously not a ChatGPT powered one, and it appears to be used, according to data they put out in a press release, about 1.5% of the time. So to flip that on its head, about 98.5% of the time, people aren't using that. Because if I'm saying I want to go to Miami for the weekend and I want a 4-star hotel near South Beach with a 4.2 rating or above, that's actually easier in many cases to click a couple of buttons than to actually type in that entire sentence I just said, or even speak it. So there are going to be plenty of use cases where the AI may be behind the scenes, making that experience more effective, but the user experience that I have is no different than what I've seen today.
I love that because, I have this underlying suspicion, maybe it's just me, that people don't really trust when someone tells them this is the best deal. And so they have to go research. So the idea that it is behind the scenes and that consumers still are empowered to make decisions on their own, I think is going to be important.
Yeah, I tend to think that the chatbot is a bit of a red herring. The Expedia chatbot and the OpenAI plugin to Expedia, they don't interchange very easily. That's fine. It's day one. Things will get better. Mm-hmm. But I think there's two drivers on the intermediaries versus suppliers thing. I think on one side, everyone has access to this technology. I have the same access as we're a small company to access the LLM of OpenAI as Expedia. Anybody on this call today can build a chatbot today in a few hours that's as good as Expedia's chatbot. The data behind it is maybe not, but the data right now is coming from the LLM, which is OpenAI, which we can all access. And that's brilliant. It's a brilliant product. You can create itinerary creators, whatever you want. I think everyone has equal access to that. The other part of that is that the bigger companies have innovators' dilemma, so they can't just switch their UX. They can't just change Expedia.com to all of a sudden be a chatbot. Obviously, they've got a few billions of dollars at stake there. On the other hand, the part that the LLM, the OpenAI fails at now, I think we'd all agree on this, is this hallucination part, the fact that it doesn't always tell the truth and it doesn't know it's not telling the truth, so it can't alert us to that fact. That's a problem. And that introduces the need for this data layer. And I think that's where the bigger companies come in, because Expedia has that data. I don't think it's booking data. I don't think it's customer data. It's kind of the knowledge data. Expedia is maybe not the best example. TripAdvisor's probably got the best data layer. But on the other hand, we can all access that data layer right now. It's publicly available.
Yeah,
so I think the bigger companies have the advantage on this data layer, and they'll move quicker on that.
Yeah, and tokens aren't cheap either. So, I mean, I do think that large companies have an advantage on the fact of the cost to compute on a lot of these things as well.
I guess. Yeah, I think that's why. Yeah, that's why we just encourage. I mean, at this point, is really focus on some great use cases. There's an ROI behind your use case, and be very disciplined and focused. And yeah, I mean, we officially, as Christian said, we've democratized AI. That everyone has an equal playing field, and yeah, so it's super exciting time.
Yeah, the thing I would equate it to is things like a booking engine or a central reservation system. If you're an independent hotel, if you're an independent travel agency, you're not building your own GDS. You're not building your own booking engine. You partner with a really good technology provider. You partner with an Amadeus. You partner with a Sabre. You partner with folks like that. I expect we're going to see those companies or two kids in a garage working on their version of those things that are more AI enabled, that the independents and the smaller companies will be able to leverage with no problem, as long as they partner well and as long as they think about what are the right kinds of technologies we need to actually compete in this space.
Yes.
Some of this we've kind of started to address here, but I'm curious if any of you, can you share just some really specific, concrete ideas for folks that are watching, whether, maybe a DMO or a hospitality business, a tourism business, on what they can start doing today or tomorrow? Like, what, clearly this is evolving, it's moving very fast. What might they do to start stepping into this?
Well, from my side, I think Gray outlined some great stuff. From a marketing content generation, I think the large use cases, if you have large call centers, it's tremendous in that area. I do think, like, all the tools that Microsoft has in your Outlook, your Word, Excel, PowerPoint, everything that you're doing, it will be released as a kind of your co-pilot. So it's just this idea that today you type and you get like 3 extra words. The AI is generated. Now you're going to get a whole paragraph to respond to it. And as that stuff comes in, it becomes part of your life cycle and your work and productivity. So you're going to see it come into tools that you existently use today. But the great use cases are really internal use cases, content creation. I think those are the hot use cases we've seen in the marketplace.
Yeah, I would add, get an OpenAI account. You can get one for free today. If you want higher level access, it's $20 a month. It's not expensive at all to start playing with and start using, right? I shouldn't even just say playing with, because I think that Shane is exactly right, that we want to try out those use cases. I tell a story all the time, and I will do this quickly because I know we don't have a ton of time. But my father worked in a bank in the 40s and 50s, and he was a loan clerk, and they literally wrote the loan details in a journal, in a book. And within a few years, that all, of course, moved to computers, big mainframes and the like. And today we find it laughable that there were people writing lines in a book to keep track of all of the accounts. Now we do that in Excel. Ray asked, is this a party trick or is it Excel? Well, it can be a party trick, but it can be Excel if you learn how to use it correctly. And the thing to do is start learning now.
I love that example. I used the Dewey Decimal System. I learned it. I knew it. I have no clue how to use it today. But do I need to use it? No, I can get any book I want. Right. That is my example to the ledger.
Yeah. Something else I would throw out that I know we brought up when we did our LinkedIn audio event in February, that Shane, you were part of that, is that it's never going to be less smart than it is today.
True.
Right. It's not perfect. But it's never going to be less smart. And something that I didn't actually realize until just recently, there's the thumbs up, thumbs down icon there on your responses. And by selecting one of those, you're helping the system to learn and get smarter. So that's another way it's going to continue to improve. Christian, did you want to jump in there with anything?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what everyone said, that you just need to be in there and play with it, because when you start getting responses back and you tweak it, you start to learn how it thinks and how it works. I think spend a bit of time as well and learn how these large language models work. Not that you need to learn the technicalities, but they're actually, it's quite simple how they're trained. And then when you understand that, you can start to imagine how what this can be applied to it and what it can't. But I think playing around, there's tons of free tools. ChatGPT is the best text one, but play around with the image ones. There's video ones now. They're not quite there yet. And then have conversations with people. I'm from the UK. We sit down in the pub and we talk about football normally, but now it's AI. Those conversations, you start dreaming about what can be done and where we're going with this. And I get so many ideas just from talking to other people. And you just start imagining where this goes. And I watch tons of YouTube on this. Watch Sam Altman. He's the CEO of OpenAI. A guy called Emad Mustak, he's Stability Diffusion CEO. Watching them, listening to them to see where they think it goes, it's interesting. You start imagining what you can use this for.
The YouTube
Mitra-
content on this topic is amazing. Sorry, Shane.
I was going to say, I was going to say, it's part of a larger family of AI products. If you think of vision, speech, translation, search, OpenAI, I mean, so it's kind of like a daisy chain. As you put that daisy chain together, it gets even more and more powerful. And like you said, every couple months, it gets 10 times better. And that's the fascinating part of where we're at today. Sorry, Greg.
Oh, no. It's funny. There was an amazing transition there for me. I was going to basically mention Hugging Face, who I think does a great job at some of the auto GPT stuff. And where I see it going is this idea that you have one model that is helping you select other models, because the cost is going to be prohibitive at some point, right? And so if a model that sits on top of all of these other tools can help you identify which ML models you need to use or which other LLMs you need to use that will help you save in cost or take specific actions, that's the really interesting part to me, is how it can help you do the selection and help you save in cost or potentially save money as an intermediary. What intermediaries are best for you? This one may have higher fees, but converts higher. How can it help you make those choices through classification?
Yeah. And Gray, I was thinking about your content again. I mean, you could just ask the thing to, hey, can you switch this to Italian? Can you switch this to Spanish? And it just, boom. And so
the emergent stuff on that, though, is interesting in the fact that, like, at certain points with the ingestion, it doesn't know these languages. And then one day you have enough content in them and they just know Spanish. The emergent behaviors is amazing to me.
Yeah. One of the things that I think is most interesting about that, you mentioned Sam Altman a minute ago. He said that we're not going to see a GPT-5. I'm paraphrasing, but we're a ways off from that, right? We may be starting to hit a point where the technology is plateauing, and that's actually okay, right? Technology doesn't win customers. Products win customers, services win customers, experiences win customers. We're going to start to see people take this incredibly powerful tool and build great services and build great experiences, as Christian is doing, as Microsoft is doing, that make this more valuable in how we use it. We don't really care about the fact that, what processor is in our computer any longer or in our phone. We care that we're able to use it to accomplish the tasks that we care about. And that's where I think we're going to start to see a lot of innovation over the next couple of years.
Should we talk about Auto GPT? Do you think that's next?
Well,
Let me just jump in here, because we do have some questions and I don't want us to run out of time. Some of them have just naturally been answered through this flow of the discussion, but there have been some questions about, first of all, clarifying the term hallucination, and are airlines, hotels, and others concerned about kind of fabricated marketing? Are there some issues around accuracy and intellectual property and just the content itself? So any input on that?
I mean, I can give a quick example. When I first started using ChatGPT, a friend of mine said, ask it about yourself. So I asked it about me, and it talked about the schools I had gone to. It said a lot of things that were absolutely perfect, but it talked about where I got my MBA from, which I don't have an MBA. And it talked about awards that I've won in the industry, which not only have I not won those awards, near as I can tell, those awards don't exist. So hallucinations are facts that a large language model can just simply make up. So you should, as a business, be concerned about that. They'll get better over time. They will get smarter over time because they get more data and ingest more recent data and things along those lines. But you can use these tools behind the scenes, as we saw Gray do, and then vet for yourself. Is it saying anything that is factually inaccurate? Is it saying anything that exposes us to legal risk? Just as we do today when we contract with an agency, just as we do today when we contract with a consultant, we want to make sure that what they're telling us is true, what they're telling us is accurate, and not exposing us to legal risk.
I mean, it worked perfectly. Tim, I told you what you wanted to hear, that you had an MBA and all these words that didn't exist, right? Like, that's what exactly.
I have won some awards.
Tim,
I do feel so necessary to say that, but
Tim, did you choose the thumbs up on those so that it keeps it in the system and then everyone else?
Oh, absolutely. They're on my website now. It's great. I like those hallucinations.
The scary thing are the AI is referencing themselves as the source of information when this is happening.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, that's a very good point, right? That you really do have to still, go through, look at what's there. It's not like you can just plug something in and then copy and paste it onto your website or whatever and just walk away, right?
Well, and they've been trained on other people's content. So you want to make sure they're not actually echoing someone else's content. There is this term, we don't need to go down this rabbit hole, but the stochastic parrot, where it is parroting back things that it has learned from other sources. some of that may be infringing copyright in some cases. Maybe the jury is quite literally out on that right at the moment, but it's something you do want to be conscious of.
Yeah, and if you, I mean, internally, if you're training material and you're training you're asking the ChatGPT a question about
Absolutely.
training material, it will answer it, and then it will cite exactly right inside the PDF of where that is. So it's working just really to drive more objectivity around it. But yeah, I mean, it does hallucinate typically after X amount of prompts. And over time, that will get better, as we've all discussed.
Yeah. Another challenge on this specific topic is companies integrating AI generated content into their own offerings. Just today, I was talking to our creative director, letting me know that Adobe Stock is now integrating AI generated images into their stock library without letting you know. And unless you look at the very fine details, like this is not a real image, it's an AI generated image, or Spotify using it for audio so they pay less on royalty fees. It's going to be very interesting to keep your eyes open for these things over the course of the next couple of years.
Well, once the lawyers get involved, you know.
I mean, you mean the AI lawyers at this point, right?
Actually, no, a friend of mine who is an attorney said, we talk about AI replacing the lawyers. He said, we haven't yet heard about anybody talking about the AI replacing the clients.
Yeah.
The lawyers are going to have some fun.
And there's been a couple questions about potentially opportunities in the business travel area. I don't know if any of you have any thoughts on that. You know, it's a sector that needs a lot of personalization. Any thoughts around how that could be put to use?
Well, I mean, I think as we move forward, I mean, travel on a business perspective it has to be more purposeful in what we do, when we go, how we do it. You know, I think at some point, how does that AI help build like my social capital? It'll help me understand, hey, you should actually go on a business trip to meet this person. So it's this kind of co-pilot, which is my assistant saying, hey, you haven't seen this person in a while. You should see this person in person as opposed to on the call. But then I think at travel agencies, this idea of having a co-pilot if I'm a travel agent and I can gather data and drive more operational efficiency through my call centers and all that. So all that could be integrated on the travel agency side and the ability just to do more with less.
As well as compliance, Concur, where it's automatically coding trips to specific client locations based on timeframes. I think that's a very interesting opportunity as well.
Yeah, there's a tool called Elemental Cognition, a startup called Elemental Cognition that actually ingests rule sets and builds various outputs based on those rule sets. So they're doing a demo right now with One World where you can do an around the world flight, right? It's the traveling salesman problem where it finds the best route for you to take. Obviously, if something like that were to start working with the rule sets of, the corporate travel and the like, it creates an opportunity for it to put together the right itinerary, get everybody where they need to be at the right time. And I also think there's a huge benefit as we start talking about intelligent agents, co-pilot, things like that, where we know that business travelers take the same amount of time that leisure travelers do. They don't enjoy it as much. So if it becomes something where they can set it in the background and it simply comes back with choose your 3 itineraries, choose from 3 itineraries, I think that's someplace we could see ourselves in not too distant future.
I agree. I like the choice element of that answer a lot.
Yeah. And then it's potentially connected right into, let's say, a payment method and different things
Absolutely.
to build that seamless system. Christian, I'm also curious, because you have been so actively working with this technology. Can you give us any sense of kind of what you're working on? You're kind of hands-on with this.
Yeah, we're building a plugin right now. So plugins came out 3 weeks ago. Applications opened up 2 weeks ago. So a plugin is this data layer, right? So you're on OpenAI, it has access to all of the data it's been trained on up until September 2021. As most people know, it doesn't know anything since then. And I think that's almost deliberate. Not deliberate, but I think that's the way it's going to stay. And then the data on top of that will come from other sources. Expedia's built a plugin. I think some people have seen Kayak's built one. So I'm building a plugin for the experiences sector. So we're getting all of the suppliers together and we're going to create this data layer for destination content and for things that you do for the things to do when you get there. So the idea being that we'll have this plugin and you're on OpenAI and you can question that data layer and we'll have the most up-to-date responses to all of the questions. Whether that's used for OpenAI or whether that's used for Google's Bard or something else in the future, I'm not sure. I just think these data layers are going to be a piece of that future. And I think those will power the co-pilots or the agents that we're talking about. I think we all have to have these agents. When we land in a place, we're going to walk around the city and we're just going to talk to our agent and we're going to say, take me to the restaurant, take me to the bridge, show me around. And we need this data layer to have that data sitting there available to us.
We're working on something very similar for sort of having timely events and things like that with clients. Saw one of them join Brad Dean from Puerto Rico, who we are doing some similar stuff, kind of integrating website content and events using plugins as well.
We should have a conversation.
Yeah.
Do you foresee, I'm wondering, as you're talking about, you land and you have this agent, do you foresee then that it's potentially my interaction with my chat agent that's kind of handling everything for that trip and that experience? I'm not going to individual apps or that sort of thing, that it's all done through this chat agent. Is that farther down the road?
I think, and this is all speculative, clearly all of this is, but I think we all end up with an agent. We all end up with a personal agent, and that agent knows who to ask for certain subjects. So that agent's plugged into Salesforce, it's plugged into Microsoft, it's plugged into your Gmail, it knows where we want to go for these different tasks.
And it has memories. I like the Smallville example where you basically have the memories and the ability to recall and sort of know how you've interacted in the past. It was an experiment with Google and Stanford.
Yeah, it'll learn all about us and which is good and bad, I guess.
Yeah, and I think the concept of and we've talked about a lot, is just this concept of a decentralized ID, where I ultimately in the Web 3.0, I own my own information and I permission brands into my world. And when I'm on a trip, I'll permission these 5 brands plus, and the AI agents will be talking to each other. So I think the decentralized ID and the growth of that will even make it even better, stronger, faster.
Yeah, absolutely. As we're just about getting to the end of our time here, I thought it might be interesting if you can each just go around. Tim, maybe we'll start with you. Just briefly, look into the crystal ball, look into the future, maybe a year from now, if we're all back here again on a webinar, what might we be talking about related to ChatGPT?
So I always think of Bill Gates has this great quote that says, we always overestimate the change that we'll see in the next 2 years, and we underestimate the change we'll see in the next 10. Right? I think if we look out 12 months, it probably looks like where we are today, but better. We will have more products, we will have more services, the AIs will be a little smarter, they will be more integrated into our day-to-day lives. Will it be, the Star Trek universal computer and things like that a year from now? Probably not. 5 years from now? Maybe. So I think it's something of, just have to watch, and we have to assume, where did that 2 year ago timeline start?
Right. Christian, what do you foresee in a year?
Yeah, I think in a year, perfect images are going to be there, perfect promptable images, promptable videos are going to be perfect quality. I just mentioned AutoGPT. AutoGPT is where 2 large language models talk to each other. I think that's where we're going to be. We don't have to do much. We just got to send it a quick tweak it in that direction, go in that direction. But I think these models are going to do the work for us, and we'll just interject when we need to from the beach. I'm not sure if we'll be on the beach in a year, but some point after that, we'll just
be making plans to be on the beach.
That's right. Yeah.
Shane?
Well, I mean, I think it will be integrated into a lot of our daily life. And I think that may be the most interesting part, is it just all of a sudden will become part of our daily life, part of our emails, part of our CRM, as it all is integrated, because it can talk to all these disparate parts and bring them all together, and it really no boundaries around it. So I think the use cases, I mean, we've seen tremendous ones out there in the marketplace, but I think we'll continue to learn about new use cases. And I think that's on the B2C side and the B2B side, but it's fundamentally going to change the productivity of our workers. And I think that's the most exciting part, and make us, focus on things that we really need to focus on. And a lot of the mundane tasks that I typically do will kind of go away, and I'll be, like we talk about the emails, I'll be 70% of the way there, and I just do the last 30% myself. And I think that opens up lots of opportunity across the board of empowering people to do more.
Doesn't that sound wonderful, actually? Like with the email, like, wow. Let's get there. Okay, well, you know, and I would just add again, we are tracking all of this on PhocusWire every day, finding stories to share. So please go to PhocusWire.com, sign up for our e-newsletter so you can get all of our coverage in your inbox every morning. And of course, don't forget to register to join us at Focusrite Europe in Barcelona in June. And Gray, I will let you have the final words.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank all of our expert panelists today, Christian, Tim, Shane. Thank you for being here, giving us your insights into this really interesting topic and really sort of exciting topic. As we wrap this up, we will be sending out the resource list, the recording of the webinar, and answering any questions that we may have not gone to through that resource list. And so with that, just thank you everyone for your time, our panelists, Mitra, as well as everyone joining us today. Thank you so much. And that's it from us.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye, all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.